Hello and welcome to Cyber Focus, your source for international business information. My name is Tim Smith and you're watching our series on business and peace. Our guest today is Donald L. Cassell Jr. As a Sagamore Senior Fellow and Director of the Liberian Initiative in the African Portfolio, Donald has spearheaded several projects, including a case study on the Liberian Philanthropy Secretariat and various papers on African growth and development. Recently, he launched the Isoko Leadership Workshop in Liberia. Donald also serves as co-host of the Sagamore Institute's internship program and is an adjunct professor at Anderson University. Prior to joining Sagamore, Donald spent 20 years as an architect in Indianapolis. Today, Mr. Cassell will share with us a bit of his personal passion and perspective as we continue our discussion on how business can and should engage the world's pursuit of peace. Donald, thank you so much for joining us today.
Pleasure to be here.
You've invested many years to supporting growth and development in Africa, particularly in Liberia. Tell us your story and how you came to hold the position you are currently in now.
Well, I'm from Liberia originally, so there was always a passion there for the country. I came here not with the intention of staying as long as I have stayed, which is 30 years or so, but because of all the crisis in Liberia, it ended up the way it did. However, the time has been meaningful, so it's been a rewarding time, those 30 years or so, and I think have made me, in the long run, a better contributor to Liberia. In Boston, I did have some just intellectual and spiritual crisis that heightened that sense of responsibility of going back and doing something for Liberia, and so that has driven me and sort of driven me to where I am now. Yes.
Okay, thank you. You're with us today because you're a panelist for the Business and Peace Conference here at Indiana University. What do you hope will come out of today's discussions?
Well, my focus has been just the way some private institutions, private business organization can be formed in such a way that it's a benefit to the community that they are part of. And I hope to spread that story and perhaps other African people, other nations in the same area, in that same condition, hearing that story might be able to see that even though you really do in fact need a fairly functioning state structure, nevertheless, if you don't have one, that does not mean you cannot do anything. There are yet things you can do in business and in the private sector that could help stimulate the environment, perhaps to end up with a stronger state structure that could only multiply your effort. So that's what I'm hoping will happen.
Excellent, thank you. I'd like to switch gears a little bit. In an article you wrote for the magazine American Outlook, you looked at the lessons African leaders can learn from the Singaporean miracle. And you wrote a sentence that really stuck with me. You said, "Wealth creation requires a cultural context." I wonder if you might expand on that sentiment and how you think it applies to the topic of business and peace.
Very good. I have been thinking about that myself for a long time, and that statement, I'm hoping that in due time I can do more with it. But essentially, the thinking behind that is that when you have businesses and you have successful organizations and good profitable businesses where profits have been made within a legitimate environment, legitimate profits, legitimate organizations, those things are often reflective of a culture. And what I'm getting at is that I'm concerned to implant within Liberia a culture and Africa as a whole, a culture of excellence, a culture of integrity, a culture of good order and discipline. So an example of that would be if you, the very article on Singapore, when you look at Singapore and see its success and how well it is managed, it really reflects not an abstract institutional structure out there, but actually you see coming through a personal commitment, a personal and a cultural commitment, a personal commitment from Lee Kuan Yew and from the general Asian culture that he has come from. That's what you see displayed there within Singapore. And so that's part of that statement. Until you can get that culture, which is perhaps even more fundamental, it will be a struggle to get to that level of performance. But business can help inform that, even forming little individual units that can begin to build that kind of culture of excellence and discipline and integrity and good order that leads to high performance. So.
Thank you. Finally, at the end of the day, what do you think needs to happen economically for growing countries like Liberia to fully engage the rest of the world on equal footing?
This is part of the panel. That was one of the last questions that were asked, and what I said was, for business going over there in Africa and with Liberia, Rwanda, or Kenya, where we work, they should look for a way for really transferring knowledge and skills and professional disciplines and those kinds of things. So the idea of excellence should embody that corporation and all the people that work for it, so that when it is all said and done, you have in fact transfer something of value to the people. So it's not only a profit-making scheme, which profits are not bad, but what I'm suggesting is that would be really a tremendous success if you have succeeded in reducing considerably the knowledge and practice gap. In Liberia right now and other African countries, there is a considerable human capacity gap. It's really very great. And to the extent that you can fill that gap, that will only sort of get into a virtuous circle where then you have more people able to partake at a higher level, perform more and contribute more to the world and to their own communities. So I think I'm hoping if that is a success today or begins to move in that direction, that would be very good.
Great. Well, Donald, thank you so much for coming in to speak with us today.
My pleasure.
That's all for this edition of Cyber Focus. Thank you for tuning in. If you have any comments or suggestions for future topics, please let us know at CIBER, that's CIBER, @indiana.edu.